Hi, this is Bharti, and we are here at Spinnaker Summit in San Diego. And today we have with us Andrew Beckes, your head of engineering at Armory. First of all, thanks for being on the show. When I look at head of engineering, before we started discussing, you're talking more about the culture. So I want to understand that what does your role actually mean, head of engineering? Is it more about technology or it's more about people?
So I like to think about it, my main role being to empower people, to empower the engineers. And really, to me, that means creating visibility and sharing context so that the engineers have the information that they need to really make great decisions and decide how they want to impact the business and the open source community.
When we look at all these, culture within company like Armory, how much is this culture getting influenced because of the fact that a lot of products or projects you're working on has some ties with open source projects?
Yeah. So an interesting thing about working on an open source project is all of the people working on it are distributed around the world. So when we're building up the engineering team at Armory, we're trying to lean into that and really play off of that. So we have a very strong remote culture, and that plays into, in open source, everybody is remote, working together asynchronously on different timelines. So we're really doubling down on that. I think that's a little bit different than, or the motivations are a little bit different than some other companies that are doing remote. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I mean, there are a lot of companies who are now embracing, remote work culture. What is the biggest advantage of, working remote? Because sometimes when you are co-located, you can, exchange ideas frequently. Remote has a lot of, challenges. So time zone is a big issue. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, remote also means that you can work when you are most productive. I work remotely, I work from my home. When you're most productive, you can also attend to a lot of family-related affairs. So the work does not come in between you and your personal life. It's a very good amalgamation, a very good mix. You can work when you feel more productive. You can take a break and attend to your kids or your family. So can you talk about some of the advantages or disadvantages of remote work that you see?
Yeah, the biggest difference is, when you're all together, you have kind of high bandwidth communication, but when you're all spread out, you don't have that bandwidth, and you have to get good at other types of communication. But like you said, one of the advantages when you're doing creative type work is that you can do it when you're ready. And usually creators need large blocks of time to focus anyways. So in a way, being remote helps remove distractions. So there are these trade-offs, but I think it also comes down to the people. Who do we want to work with? If we're open to remote, we're able to work with great people all around the world rather than just the good people that are located in one area.
And then it also kind of, because when you co-locate, people have to move, or you can only find people in the location. With remote work, you can have the best of the breed people working from Europe, from India, from Africa, even from Antarctica, if you can find any. So your workforce is not limited to that location.
Yeah, exactly. That's really how we think about it. And there are challenges. You mentioned time zones, and we actually don't have workers in Europe yet. We mainly have people working in United States, Canada, Mexico, North America, and so we only really have 3, maybe 4 time zones to work with. So we have an overlap in the day to communicate for 4 to 5 hours. And that's working for us really well right now. In the past, I've worked at other companies where we've had to, we've worked with a team in India and then had to, every type of communication, it seemed like it took 2 days. So it takes 1 day for them to get my message, and then their feedback takes 1 day to get back to me, unless we do these very early calls or late night calls.
One of the big challenge, or the big difference between remote work and co-located is that you come into the office, punch your card, so your manager knows that you are in the office, and then you can set up the meetings as you want. With remote, is you don't know, as you mentioned, when somebody is working, which also means you have to have any structure, because you cannot have, an outlaw, or free flow. So, which actually sometimes makes it more challenging, so that everybody is in sync Because now it's you cannot get everybody in the meeting at 10 a.m. because it may be 1 p.m. somewhere else, it may be midnight somewhere else. So you need a structure. So I'm curious about what kind of structure you have to make this remote work for you.
So at the simplest infrastructure that we have is based on Zoom, to be honest. So we do a lot when we do need that high bandwidth synchronous communication. We do a lot of video calls, and we have video calls set up or stations set up all around the office. So in our main kind of all hands area, there's several cameras and a Zoom that's always on in that room to allow people to drop in. And sometimes even though people are distributed, we'll all have lunch together, or a subset of us will have lunch together. And some of the other things that we do are on the engineering side, we use Scrum most of the time, but we found that some of the teams have found, I should say, that in their stand-ups, instead of doing a traditional stand-up, they'll do more of a sync and spend more time together and talk a little bit deeper about things that some people in the office might kind of talk about throughout the day. So those are just a few things that people are doing to work together. And working together, collaboration is one of our core values actually as an engineering team. And collaboration happens in a lot of ways. So I mentioned the video conferencing, but also through documents. So a design doc on the engineering side, people making comments, talking back and forth, or on the open source side, just in GitHub on pull requests.
So collaboration is one of the core values, but there are more core values. So can you just first of all list all the core values, and if you can just explain a bit about each core value?
Yeah. So another one of the core values is about continual growth and improvement. So we believe all of us are very interested in continuing to grow, continuing to learn, being introduced to new technologies, new techniques, mentorship. All of these things are very important to everybody, and also growing in how we work together. So not just gaining new technical depth, but also learning how each other work and how we can play into that and how we can become a better team and strive for our larger goals together. One of our other core values is around thoughtfulness on the work that you do, and determining if you should invest your time into making something perfect, or should you invest your time into going very quickly. And those are two very different modes that we work in at Armory on the engineering side. And that's a little bit different, I think, than some companies. So, when we're in a rapid prototyping phase, we're optimizing for speed. And really the goal of that code is to validate a product hypothesis or an assumption. And, those learnings that we get from that will usually evolve into a bigger product feature. And at the time when it's determined, okay, we validated all of these hypotheses, we're going to build a bigger feature, then we switch modes. And it's more about, hey, we have to make sure this scales well, we need to make sure that it's above a certain quality, and it's a complete shift in what you're optimizing for. And I think that might be a little bit different than some companies who focus on one of those two at a time.
I remember earlier you also mentioned, you also try to do some get-together, for the employees. Do you also organize, an yearly meeting or an event where everybody from Armory come together under one roof, just so that people do see each other's face, that, hey, you're not actually that tall or you're not that short?
Yeah, we sure do. This event is one of them that at least on the engineering side, most of the engineering team comes to this event. It's a great place also, not only for them to get to know each other better, but to get to know the wider community. And for the events, we have other events like a engineering offsite. We have one quarterly usually, and the bulk of the engineers get to make it to that, but we still are remote friendly for the ones that can't. So usually at least a couple times a year, the majority of the engineers will get face-to-face time with each other.
What is the importance of these face-to-face events?
So I'd say that building relationships is really core to our business surviving, right, or thriving, I should say. And building relationships, there's a lot of different ways to do it. When you are in that low bandwidth communication, you're typing on Slack, you can have certain types of conversations, but it's a lot different to have a conversation when in a different tone, right? So face to face, you can look at each other, but most of the time when you're doing that over Zoom, it's with an objective. So you're trying to, hey, let's sync on this feature, let's talk about this, let's do this review of this code together, let's walk through it. So there's an objective. But when you take that out and you just let people, be together with the only objective really to build a relationship with each other and get to know each other on a more personal level. So that's what we really get out of the quarterly offsites.
If you look at the work culture, the industrial evolutions kind of destroyed our families. We had to move out of our home to factory, and then it broke the families. But if you look at today's emerging technologies, internet, 5G, and then Zoom, and then VR, it is creating an opportunity where we can get the families back together because you don't have to leave your house to be able to work. You can work for the best of the best company in the world without having to leave your family, without having to leave your root. So do you think that the remote culture is the future of work culture, where people won't have to actually leave their place? At the same time, people don't look at it. Let's say I want to live in California. It's a beautiful town. I want to live here, or Montana, wherever you want to live, but you may not have that company there. But remote culture allows you, it's not just about not having to leave your house. It's also about moving to a place where you actually want to live, at the same time doing a job that you want to do.
Yeah, I think that a lot of companies are buying into that more and more. For us, it was a much easier decision because, like I mentioned, the open source community is distributed. So it really made sense to invest in that and to be good at that. And other companies I talk to that do remote, they have mixed experiences. So some of them are, it's remote is tacked on as a secondary thing. And the truth is that the remote experience is not the same as the on-site experience. It is different. And everybody understanding the differences and trying to bridge the gap and really just having empathy for each other's positions and what the other person is going through in their day-to-day work. I think that really helps make the whole thing work well together. But yeah, when I talk to other companies about it, they have, some of them are all remote and they don't even have a headquarters. Some of them are no remote at all. And then we have a mix right now, and it's working well for us right now. And we have a lot of, we're very open inside of our company to giving each other feedback about things and talk about our experiences. And so we have, we have a committee that focuses on making sure that remote culture, that the remote members of the company are getting what they need out of their experience.
Remote has its own advantages and disadvantages. I work from home, so sometime when my son comes and look at my office, sometime because I'll edit a video, I'll file a story. After that, I'll open my PlayStation or Xbox and start playing a game, or I'll be watching something on Netflix. And so most of the time he thinks that I'm only playing games, and he thinks that mom goes to work, but dad just has fun at home. So remote culture also means you have to be very strict about yourself as well, because there is no manager there. You are your manager. So do you have some tips for people who work remotely to become more efficient?
So there's actually a book that I've enjoyed called Remote. And I don't work from home very often. So the other thing about remote is you could also just be working remotely down the street from your office. And I don't work remote very often, but when I do, it is a way different experience. And I wanted to learn more about that experience for other people. And there's a book called Remote, and it has a lot of information about what the experience is like and what people can expect. So for those that haven't worked remotely before, to really understand the differences and what their experience might be like and what the challenges are that they might face making the transition. And the book outlines some kind of techniques to make this transition and to combat some of the surprising or some surprises that might come up that people just didn't think about being remote.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew, for talking to me today, because this is a topic which is actually close to my heart, because I myself work remotely, and I think it also kind of is good for society also, because you're not spending that much, you're not wasting that much time in commuting. You are not away from your family. You can, and I think it leads to happy people, happy employees. So thanks for having this discussion today, and I actually look forward to talking to you again at the next Spinnaker Summit.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.